Hey everybody, this is Dr. Glenn and welcome to our Tuesday Dr. Glenn Live at 12:30. And today we thought we would talk about a real exciting development in the world. Actually, it's in the whole world, but in the world of cognitive decline and Alzheimer's and everything. We would talk today about the fingers study. And there was just a great some great research that just came out about it recently that has sort of brought, refreshed it to our attention. Finger study stands for the Finnish Geriatric Intervention Study to Prevent Cognitive Impairment and Disability. Now, I don't know how they took all of that and came up with fingers, but they did. They must have been using Danish or something. No, not Danish. That's what they speak in Denmark. Finnish. Finnish is what they speak in Finland. But what this whole study began in the very beginning back in 2014 with a local study in Finland where they went through and they evaluated the risk factors for cognitive decline and then came up with an intervention protocol. So now what they've done is starting in 2017, they started recruiting other countries. And so, just a couple of statistics here for you as we get started. Right now, 2001, there are over 50 million people in the world with Alzheimer's. That's a lot. And actually, the projection is that it will be well over 80 million by the end of the decade. And as a lot of you know, there isn't a pharmaceutical for this. And this preoccupation with drugs to treat problems has sort of left the US kind of lagging behind in some ways, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we are so programmed that when we get sick, we take a pill. But for this problem, we know that it doesn't work, and the best example of that is just, last month, recently, the big Biogen thing with that new drug that they came out with, got through the FDA. It hasn't even been proven to work. It costs over $50,000 a year. And what you don't read in the newspaper and here on the TV and stuff is that over 40% of the people that were taking that drug ended up with brain swelling and bleeding. And also, the other thing that you don't hear is that that drug was compared to the Dr. Bredesen's Recode Reversing Cognitive Decline Protocol, which is like Dr. Bredesen's version of this finger study. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. And that's actually what we do here at the Carroll Institute is we do this program. It's nice to see, though, that the U.S., the American Alzheimer's Association is finally getting on board. So let me go back and so they started this study, this approach to treating cognitive decline in Finland back in 2014. And within a couple of years, they were noticing remarkable results. So Finland said, hey, world, we found something that really works. And as of 2017, there were over 25 other countries doing this approach to cognitive decline. And just recently, the US has gotten on board, the American Alzheimer's Association. They said, well, we're not finding a drug. Well, we might as well do one of these oddball, holistic alternative things, The great thing is those things work usually. But so what happened is they've started this thing in the US. The problem for most people is that there's only 6 centers where you can get it done. And living down here in Florida, the closest one to us is at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. And the next closest one is at Baylor School of Medicine in Houston. It is, some of y'all know, I went to Baylor. I'm a Baylor guy, but Houston and North Carolina are not really very convenient. So that's why we're doing this actual implementation of this stuff right here in our clinic in Sarasota. But let me go over and let's just kind of go through a few things. I'll put up a couple things here. So what the finger study has demonstrated is the major risk factors for developing Alzheimer's and other forms of cognitive decline fall into these groups here that I've put up here on the screen next to me. The number one thing is diabetes, or blood sugar regulation in general, but diabetes is the main example of blood sugar regulation problems. Right now in the United States, 40% of Americans are diabetic. That, if there was ever an indictment of the way we have eaten and lived for the last generation, 40% of us are now diabetic. That is the biggest indictment you could ever have, that we have done something wrong for a long time. The next thing, which it's kind of the flip side, or it's like the other side of the same coin as diabetes, is obesity. About 70% of Americans, you may already know this stuff, 70% of Americans are overweight, and over half of those people are clinically obese. So you take diabetes and obesity and put those two things together, and man, you just hit a lot of people. Other things, other major risk factors for cognitive decline are hypertension. Well, I can tell you what, I can't even think of the last time somebody started in a program with us that they weren't on blood pressure medication. And the thing about blood pressure medication, of course, pharmaceutical companies, they love this stuff. They get you on this. Now, you got to take this the rest of your life. I bet if you're out there and you're listening and you have a thyroid issue, I will guarantee you were told by somebody, whether it was an endocrinologist or your primary care doctor, we're going to put you on some Synthroid or levothyroxine or some other thing like that, and you'll have to take it the rest of your life. Well, of course you do, because people need to pay for their vacations and their college education for their kids and put into of course you're taking this stuff the rest of your life. Our system is really great at getting you on drugs, but our system is not good at getting you off of them. And so you have these people with hypertension, so many taking blood pressure medication. Look, high blood pressure is not that difficult. Your adrenal glands control your blood pressure. It's very simple. Your adrenal glands are your fight or flight mechanism. If you have a stress event, stress could be the Vikings landing. I always use this example, and they're coming to, pillage your village and rape the women and, take over everything and kill everybody off. Well, that's kind of a fight or flight event. I mean, you've either got to stand and defend yourself against the Vikings, or you better take off quick. Something like that. But other types of stress events are also emotional stress, family stress, financial. Sitting in traffic on US 41 during rush hour is stressful. All of these things drive the adrenal glands into a stress response. And one of the things that happens when you become stressed is your blood pressure goes up. Why? If you have to either swing the axe and defend yourself against the Vikings, or you have to run away from lions and tigers and bears, you need high blood pressure. When you're stressed, your blood pressure goes up. You know how you get rid of high blood pressure? Find what's driving the blood pressure up and eliminate it. The most common thing that drives up blood pressure is gut irritation. Now, just a moment ago, I said that diabetes and obesity were huge problems. If you have diabetes and obesity, I'll bet you there's something wrong with your diet. I'll bet you if there's something wrong with your diet, your gut just might be inflamed. And if it's inflamed, that's going to be driving your adrenal glands into hyperactivity, raising your blood pressure even when you're asleep. So these are big risk factors. The other one is physical inactivity. And physical inactivity is, especially with this whole COVID thing and everybody, sequestering at home and all this stuff, people stopped being active. You don't have to live on a treadmill and wear spandex all day, but you need to get up and be active. And if that means you just go for a nice brisk walk once or twice a day, do that. The next thing is depression. Now, here's the thing about depression. Depression is one of the major early signs of cognitive decline. All right. Depression is controlled by a number of things. The number one thing being a neurotransmitter called serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that gives you a positive outlook on life. Okay, some people call it the happy thing. Well, it's not necessarily happy, but it's more of a positive outlook on life. When I was in school, we were taught that that serotonin was made in your brain. That's what we were taught, that your serotonin is made right here in your brain. We now know, as of about a year and a half ago, that over 90% of serotonin is made in your gut. Oh, so if your gut's not happy and you're driving up your adrenal glands and you're bloating and gassy all the time, guess what else you're probably not doing? You're probably not making enough serotonin. So now you get diabetes, you're obese, your blood sugar goes up, you're sitting around on the couch because you don't feel like doing anything, and you become depressed. So all these things work together. The next one is smoking. Now, we think of smoking in terms of like, yeah, if you smoke, you get cancer. And that's a good probability. There's another side of smoking that people don't think about usually when it comes to cognitive decline issues. But if you're smoking, how much oxygen are you getting to your brain? Not much, I'll bet you, because when you smoke, you decrease your body's ability to take oxygen in, and therefore less oxygen gets up in here into your brain. So we know then what happens is no oxygen, your brain's function starts to shut down because you're not getting enough fuel and oxygen into your brain. Then the last one here, and this is the way that they put it in the report, and I'm gonna elaborate on this for a minute. And they said low education, and this can have several sort of aspects to it. One is, yes, people who do spend longer in school driving their brains, exercising their brains, they do tend to have less cognitive decline problems than people who don't. But that's only one aspect of it, because you can say, well, I'm 65 years old. I'm not going back to college. Well, that's not what it's also talking about necessarily. It's it's decreasing your learning as you age. A lot of us, you get out of school, you get going in life, you have kids, you do all this sorts of stuff, and you kind of just put your brain on neutral. I like to encourage people, keep using that brain, whether it's playing a musical instrument, learn a foreign language, read books, do something with your brain. For our patients here in the office, one of the things that we do is we have an online app that we use to train their brain, to exercise their brain. And I can actually program that to exercise the exact pathways that you need to exercise for your brain. So when they looked at these risk factors, they designed an intervention, and this is the things that they worked on. It was a 2-year program. Now I want to stress that 2-year program concept. We have become so used to instant gratification, immediate feedback, that, I say this a lot of times to people, I don't know about you, but when I was like in the second grade, we had a party line. I lived out here on Weber. Some of you who live here in Sarasota know where Weber is. Well, we had a party line. And, and then once you got your own phone, there wasn't any answering machine or anything like that. If you called somebody and they weren't home, well, you called them back later after dinner. And then we got these little answering machine things, and if you called somebody, you left a message and you thought, well, they'll call me back tonight when they get home after dinner. But now I see people, they send a text, they sit there looking at their phone waiting for an instant response. It's like, well, I just sent this 3 seconds ago and they're dissing me. They're not even responding back yet. We have gotten so accustomed to instant gratification, immediate feedback, that we can't even think in terms of this is going to take a couple of years. But it does, or it can. Sometimes we see a lot quicker response, but you need to give the brain time to heal. So in a 2-year combination therapy means that you do all of these things. And see, one of the problems that we have with the way research is done right now is we've become so obsessed with these things called double blind studies. So what happens is, you take the drug, right? And then you take the placebo, the sugar pill or whatever you want to call it, and one group of people gets the drug and the other group of people gets the sugar pill, and then you take it for a while and then you compare the two. As those are the only two factors that are possibly involved in someone's health. Health is not that simple. Sometimes you have to do everything right in order to get results. And so our whole way of doing research is based on a methodology that is completely outdated for 21st century diseases. But if you take all of these things, physical exercise, and this is not exercise, and I say this all the time, this is not spending the rest of your life on a treadmill. It's a very special way. It only takes a few minutes a day to exercise your brain. You make dietary changes, cognitive stimulation, vascular risk issues. That means you bring your inflammation levels down and so forth. And something that is so important that, most people just slip right past it, and that's how important sleep is. And let me do this. I'm going to bring up, I used this actually last week. Let me pop this one up. This is what we call our, Dr. Bredesen came up with this. And for those of y'all who know, Dr. Bredesen ran the Buck Institute of Aging out at UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles. And he's the one that actually created this whole thing called RECODE, or reversing cognitive decline. And I was in the first group of doctors that Dr. Bredesen trained years ago. And this is what we do. We take a person, we look and see what's going on with them, and then we figure out which one or what combination of these things you can see here in the wheel do we need to address. And actually, we address all of them. Some things are more appropriate depending on the person and what happens to be giving them trouble. But if you look here, we just start off right at the 1 o'clock there. We got, exercise, getting it right. Like I said, it doesn't take a lot of time to get it right. Sleep. And I always like to put this out there because a lot of people don't really understand sleep very well. There are two criterias for what qualifies as good sleep. Number one, you fall asleep easily. Now, what do I mean by that? If you lay down at a reasonable hour, let's just say it's 10:30. Doesn't matter what time it is, but let's say it's 10:30. If you lie down at 10:30 most nights, you should be able to fall asleep easily within 10, 15 minutes or so. What that tells you is that your cortisol is coming down, your melatonin is coming up, and everything hormonally. See, being able to fall asleep has a lot to do with the regulation of your hormones. You should be able to fall asleep easily. That's criteria number one. Criteria number two is you should be able to sleep through the night. Now, what does that mean? Well, what it means is this. If you get up in the night to go wee, and that's not a problem, especially if if it's been 3 or 4 hours and you might need to go, well, fine. If you get up in the night and you go to the bathroom, you should be able to lie down and go right back to sleep. Okay? That means you needed to go to the bathroom. If you wake up in the middle of the night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you go to the bathroom because you haven't been in 4 or 5 hours, you get back in bed and you're laying there for 45 minutes, hour, hour and a half, and you can't go back to sleep easily, quickly, that's not a I needed to go to the bathroom problem. That is a hormonal regulation problem that is usually based on what we call reactive hypoglycemia. Your blood sugar is falling too far in the night. It gets down to a critical level. Your adrenal glands kick in to save you by releasing cortisol, adrenaline, insulin, and stored sugar in your liver called glycogen into your blood to raise your blood sugar back up. Because if your blood sugar falls too far, you could go into what's called a diabetic coma. That's not good. So if you're waking up around 3 in the morning, you go to the bathroom, you get back in bed, and you're laying there for an hour or so and you cannot fall back to sleep, that is a blood sugar regulation problem. And you have got to get that fixed. Not only because you're not sleeping, and sleep is when your body carries out the garbage and goes in and fixes up stuff. It's also when you convert short term working memory into longer term memory back here. The memory that you create in what's called your frontal cortex, that is called working memory. And that's kind of like you look up at something and you see a sign and a phone number, and then you look down, you write the phone number down or something like that. Or somebody walks up to you and says, "Hi, my name's Bob." And you go, "Hi, Bob." Well, that was just an example of your working memory. During sleep is when you take your working memory and you convert it into longer term memory. It goes back through your medial temporal lobe and into your hippocampus. And it's kind of complex, but that's when you create your memories. So if you're not sleeping well, you're not carrying out the trash, you're not repairing tissue that needs to be repaired, and you're not creating memories. Those are really important things. The next thing is stress. And I tell people, my dad was a Marine Corps drill instructor. He was a Sergeant Carter guy, if you remembered Sergeant Carter and Gomer Pyle. Well, that was my dad. As a matter of fact, every Sunday at 5 o'clock, I had to stand at attention outside of my bedroom door. Yes, sir. And I had to have my bedroom inspected. All right. They say once a Marine, always a Marine. Well, that was my pop. My dad was a Marine and he was always a Marine. When I was growing up, stress was considered a character flaw. It's one of those things maybe your parents said, "I'll give you something to be stressed out about. Just bend over there." Well, stress is actually a real thing. It's not just a character flaw. And we have a lot of stuff coming at us today. And especially like watching the news and all of that, or, just even sitting in traffic. All of these things are stressful. You need to develop ways of being able to just drop that whole thing down. Because when you're stressed, you get hormonal reactions that are bad for your brain. Stimulation has to do with stimulating your brain. Do something, learn something, read things that make you think. One of the greatest things that you can do to make your brain function, try to learn a foreign language or learn to play a new musical instrument, something like that. Yes, you can. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can still try something like that. Detoxification. This is a group of things that we see all the time. And this has so much to do with where you grew up and where you've lived and everything that you've been exposed to. Whether you grew up in a mining town in Pennsylvania or, downtown LA, and breathing all that stuff, or, eating fish all the time and you end up with mercury poisoning. All this stuff builds up in you. And if you don't go in and get it, and pull it out, it's going to it camps out inside your brain forever. And this can drive an awful lot of problems. The next thing, there are supplements. Supplements, you either like supplements or you don't like supplements. But what I find quite often is a lot of people are taking supplements hoping to be lucky. In other words, they're hoping that they're taking the right stuff, but they just don't know for sure. Or I have people ask me all the time, "Hey, I see this stuff on TV. Is this good for my brain?" I say, "Well, I don't know. I don't know what your brain needs. If your brain needs what it has, then it's good for your brain. And if your brain needs something else, then it might be a complete waste of your money." Supplements need to be specifically designed exactly for what you need. How do you know what you need? There's two ways you know what you need. One, you run labs and find out what's going on. Number two, you look at your DNA and you figure out what you need to fix the problem that was in your labs. So supplements are not that simple, and not everybody should be taking the same stuff, one. And number two, if your gut works like it's supposed to, and you're eating like you shouldn't need to take a whole bunch of stuff anyway. Maybe just some very specific things that match what you need. So supplements are these things that you shouldn't need to take this. I have people come in with like grocery sacks full of stuff, and they're wanting me to read the labels on everything. I said, how about if we figure out what you need first and then find out what you need to keep and get rid of the rest of this stuff, because you do need to have room for dinner left over. The last thing up there, and it's actually not the last thing, it's actually the biggest tool in your toolbox, is nutrition. We have been told since the 1950s to eat in a way that has made us horribly sick. We've been told to eat low fat, high carbohydrate foods. And now, as a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know this. The very first year pesticides were sprayed on our foods in the United States was in 1994. The very first genetically modified food sold in America was a tomatoes, right? Tomatoes were genetically modified to increase their shelf life. What a lot of people don't think about is that spoilage is a huge loss in the grocery business. So they just started genetically modifying food so they wouldn't spoil as quickly. Then as we got more and more into industrial farming, they started spraying the crops and they started genetically modifying them so they can spray the crops with pesticides. So it's what you eat, as in bring the good quality fats up, get those sugar-full carbohydrates down, but it's also the quality of what you eat. These things are all really, really important. One last thing that I wanted to bring up, or let's see, hold on. This one right here. I wanted to bring up here, oh, let me do this, get rid of that. Okay, it's kind of hard to read, but this was out of the Lancet. The Lancet is like the journal of the British Medical Association. When I talk about this stuff and they say, oh, well, that sounds really good, but is there any literature that proves, I'm going to move that over a little bit. Is there any literature that proves that this actually works? Yep, there's tons of it now, and it's coming out all the time. This is a wonderful article in the Lancet where it takes this, remember, 2-year, get the time frame, get your anticipation of what it's going to take, in the right frame of reference. It takes time to fix these things, all right? But 2-year multi-domain, what does that mean? It's all the stuff we just talked about: diet, exercise, sleep, supplements, all of these things. All of these things come together, and we now have documentation that shows that this is how you treat cognitive decline. This is what you need to do. This whole thing that's happened recently with the Biogen thing and all that, it should be driving home the idea is there isn't a drug to fix this. We have discovered through Dr. Bredesen out at UCLA, we have discovered there are 36 different things that drive cognitive decline. And by the time a person starts to realize they're having their senior moments, you're going to have at least 10 things going on. And there will never be a drug developed that can treat all of these different things in one pill. So I hope this has been helpful for you. This is what we do here at the Carroll Institute. If you would like to find out if what we do here would be a good match for you, we offer something called a free discovery phone call. And what you do is you get on the phone with one of our certified health coaches, and you can talk to them for a little bit. They'll ask you some questions. You can tell your story. You can ask some questions of them, and we'll find out if what's going on with you is something that we can help you with. And if it is, well, then they will get you scheduled, and we'll have a look at you, and we'll say, yeah, we need to take care of this, and yeah, looks good. And so we offer that free discovery phone call. You can call the phone number there, and you can speak to either Nina or Lenine, and they will answer some questions for you and then get that scheduled for you. You can also go to our website, and there's a little place up at the top in the menu where it says schedule. And you can go there and you can schedule a free discovery phone call there if you would like to. So I hope this has been beneficial for you today. I appreciate you spending your lunchtime with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.